There exists a special time when the day, with all its clamor, its haste, and its brilliant light, finally yields its place to silence. It is a moment when the world around you seems to take a deep, slow exhale, and the very air becomes infused with tranquility. The heavy thoughts and worries of the day begin to lose their sharp edges, dissolving into the soft twilight like salt in warm water. In this hour, on the threshold between what is real and what is dreamed, your consciousness becomes like the quiet, smooth surface of a lake, ready to reflect the eternal sky and the distant stars. It is precisely at such a time that it is best to set out on journeys that require no movement of the body, but only the flight of thought. Allow this narrative to become your guide on such an odyssey. This is an invitation to a nightly discourse, to a banquet where the dishes served are not the fruits of the earth, but ideas, and instead of wine, the mind becomes intoxicated by the beauty and depth of words. Our path lies through the veil of centuries to a city where the very atmosphere itself inspired contemplation. Imagine a land over which the deep, velvety sky of the south has unfurled. Beneath it stands a city of white stone, which over the long day has absorbed the sun's warmth, and now, in the evening's coolness, gently releases it, radiating a faint, soft luminescence. The streets, which only recently were filled with a lively hum, are now growing quiet. The air is thick, suffused with the fragrances of flowers and the faintly salty breath of a distant sea. Above the roofs, one by one, the stars ignite, pure, bright, like waypoints in the boundless expanse of the cosmos. They are the silent witnesses to countless conversations that have taken place beneath their shimmering gaze. In one of the houses of this city, in the soft golden light of oil lamps that cast living, trembling shadows upon the walls, a small society has gathered. They are friends, come together to celebrate the success of their companion, a poet whose tragedy has just won acclaim. The supper has ended, and now, in the stillness that has followed, they seek nourishment for the mind. This is a symposium in its truest, original sense, not merely a feast, but a shared drinking from the wellspring of wisdom. Tonight, they have agreed not to argue about politics or the affairs of the everyday. Their aim is higher. They have decided to take turns, each in their own speech, to celebrate one of the most powerful and mysterious forces that governs the world and the life of every person, a force that can grant wings and inspire heroic deeds, but which can also bring forth great pain and suffering, a force that everyone knows, yet no one can ever fully comprehend. They have decided to speak of love, of Eros as they called him. This question, like a quiet melody, begins to resonate in the warm, still air of the room. What is this force, truly? Is it one of the primordial gods who brought order to chaos at the dawn of the world's creation? Or, on the contrary, is it the youngest, most beautiful, and most whimsical of the divine beings, one who plays with the fates of mortals? And perhaps Eros is not a deity at all, but a grand spirit mediator, a link that connects the world of humans and the world of gods, the earthly and the celestial. Or could it be that there are two loves? One, a common corporeal love that belongs to all, and another, a noble spiritual love, which is the destiny of a chosen few. Is it not possible that love is the universal law of harmony, that which reconciles all opposites, creating a perfect unity from warring elements, as it is in music or in medicine? Or perhaps is it worth believing in the old legend, the one whispered in hushed tones, the legend of how human beings were once whole creatures, powerful and complete, but for their pride, they were split in two by the gods. And ever since that time, each half in the world restlessly seeks its other part, and love is that sweet and painful recognition, that overwhelming yearning for a lost unity, and the desire to merge once more into a single whole being. These questions drift in the air, not demanding an immediate answer. They create a space for contemplation, tuning the soul to a thoughtful, meditative state. Each of the men present, the poet, the physician, the philosopher, prepares to offer his own response, to share his own vision. They are not competing, but complementing one another, weaving a single tapestry of thought, where each pattern is unique, yet is an integral part of the greater picture. And you, as you listen to this story, you become an invisible guest at this banquet of the spirit. There is no need to strain your mind or to analyze every word. Simply allow these ancient yet eternally living ideas to resonate within your consciousness. Allow them to be like a quiet stream that washes over the stones of your thoughts, making them smooth and serene. This is an invitation into a world where philosophy is not a dry theory, but a living, warm conversation about what matters most, about that which moves us to seek beauty, to strive for truth, and to find meaning in the union with another soul. Everything is ready for the discourse to begin. The air is thick with anticipation. The silence seems almost palpable, a thing that can be touched. And now it will be broken by the first voice, a voice that will praise love as the most ancient power, the one that gives a human being wings for the very highest flight. Before the first voice resounds, before the first thought of love is clothed in words, let us linger for one more moment within this room. Let us dissolve into its atmosphere, breathe in its air, and allow its profound calm to fill us completely. For ideas, especially those that touch upon the most delicate stirrings of the soul, are not born in haste and clamor. They require a special place, a quiet harbor where they can safely emerge from the depths and into the light. And this room, it is just such a harbor. Consider the light. Here, it is the master artist, the chief conductor of the mood. This is not the even, cold, and indifferent light of modern lamps. It is the living, warm, and ever-shifting flame of several oil lamps placed in the corners of the room. It breathes. A faint draft from the open doorway causes it to tremble, and with it, the shadows on the walls come alive and dance. They elongate, and then they shrink, transforming the space of the room into a small enigmatic theater. See how the shadow of an amphora of wine becomes like a tower, and the shadow of a cloak folded on a chair resembles the figure of a crouching beast. But these shadows are not frightening. They are soft, like watercolors. They do not conceal, but rather they suggest, leaving a vast space for the imagination. This golden light touches gently upon everything it falls on. It smooths the sharp corners, softens the features of the faces, and renders the colors deeper and warmer. The murals on the walls, depicting scenes from myths, lose their sharp clarity and transform into mysterious, barely discernible frescoes, like memories surfacing from the depths of the mind. The mosaic floor, which by day glittered with bright little stones, now lies like a quiet, dark river, in which here and there golden sparks from the reflected flames flicker into being. This light creates a feeling of intimacy, of separateness from the entire world outside. It builds around those present invisible, yet sturdy, walls of comfort. And now listen closely to the silence. This is not a dead, empty silence. It is filled with barely audible sounds that only serve to accentuate its depth. There is the faint hiss of the oil in the lamps, a quiet, continuous sound that is as lulling as the distant song of cicadas. There, one of the guests shifts ever so slightly on his couch, and the fabric of his chiton rustles softly. There, someone places a ceramic cup upon the table, and it answers with a short, dull thud. These sounds do not disturb the peace. On the contrary, they are woven into it, creating the living, breathing fabric of the silence. And reigning over all of this is the sound of breath, the even, deep inhalations and exhalations of people whose thoughts are now all flowing in a single direction. It is a shared rhythm that unites them more powerfully than any words ever could. It is the breath of anticipation, the breath of concentration. They are not merely silent, they are listening. They are listening to the space, listening to one another, listening to the very depths of themselves, from which a word is just about to be born. The air in the room is also special. Through the open doors drifts the coolness of the night, mingled with the aromas of the garden, the scent of earth warmed by the day, the sharp perfume of cypress trees, and the sweet notes of night-blooming flowers. This freshness blends with the warm scents within the delicate fragrance of the burning olive oil, the faint spirit of wine lingering in the cups, and the scent of the home itself, of wood, of clay, and of human warmth. This mixture of aromas creates a feeling of home, of safety, a place where one can truly be oneself. In such an atmosphere, a thought is born. It does not arrive as a sudden flash, nor does it arise as the result of a sharp dispute. It gestates slowly, organically. At first, it is only a feeling, a barely perceptible image, a vague premonition. It wanders in the silence, searching for a form, trying on different words as if they were garments. The people gathered here do not fear the pauses. They know that a pause is not emptiness, but a space for maturation. It is the moment when an idea gathers its strength before it emerges into the world. The room transforms into a unique workshop of the spirit. There is no place here for pride, for the desire to impress or to win an argument. There is only a shared labor, a collective search. Each person present is at once both a listener and a creator. They know that truth does not belong to any single person. It reveals itself only in dialogue, in the respectful consideration of another's thought. Their faces, illuminated by the soft flames, are calm and focused. Their gazes are directed not so much at one another, but somewhere into the center of the room, to an invisible point where the energy of their shared thought is now gathering. This is that sacred space where philosophy ceases to be an abstract discipline and becomes a living, breathing process. It is an alchemy of the word, where simple sounds are transmuted into profound meanings, where the personal experience of each, passing through the filter of contemplation, becomes a part of a common universal knowledge. It is precisely in such a setting, slow, solemn, and serene, that a conversation about love can begin. Any other atmosphere would distort it, would render it either too grandiose or too mundane. But here, in the flickering light of the lamps, amidst a silence filled with reverence, one can speak of the highest matters without fear of seeming ridiculous or naive. Everything is ready. The space has been cleansed of all that is extraneous. The minds are attuned to the same wavelength. The silence has reached its ultimate depth, and now it itself yearns to be broken. It awaits the voice that will fill it with the first story, the first image, the first attempt to comprehend the incomprehensible. And that voice is already poised to speak. And the silence which had seemed so absolute was finally broken, not sharply, not with a sudden loudness, but rather, as if from the very depths of the stillness, a sound was born, at first barely audible, and then growing ever clearer. It was the voice of a young man. It did not yet hold the bitterness of experience or the weariness of maturity, but it resonated with a sincere, unshakable conviction. The voice was pure and even. It flowed through the room like a serene river, carrying its waters to the sea of truth. The one who spoke did not look at anyone in particular. His gaze was fixed upon the trembling flame of a lamp, as if he were addressing the fire itself, the very essence of light. And he began. "My friends," he said softly, "if we wish to speak of love, of our majestic Eros, then let us begin at the true beginning, at the source. Let us first pay him his due honor by acknowledging his origin. For Eros is not merely one of the gods. He is the most ancient. He is one of the first principles of our world. Just consider the chroniclers of the gods and the poets tell us that in the beginning there was only chaos. Then was born Gaia, the wide-bosomed earth, the eternal foundation of all things. And immediately after her, from that same primordial womb, Eros appeared. He came into being before many of the Olympians, whom we are accustomed to revere. He saw the mountains being born, and the first rivers beginning to flow. He was a witness when the stars first ignited in the night sky. Eros is not simply a god of feelings. He is a cosmic force. He is the primordial impulse toward union, toward creation, toward harmony. It is the very same force that compelled chaos to yield to order. It is the longing that is suffused throughout all of existence. He is the reason a seed reaches for the sun, the reason a river yearns for the sea, the reason the celestial bodies move in their orbits as if in a magnificent dance. He is the most ancient, and therefore he is for us the source of the greatest blessings. For what can be more valuable than that which stands at the very origins of life itself? The voice paused for a moment, allowing the listeners to grasp this majestic picture. The room filled with the thought of eternity, of those times when the world was still young and love already existed as its fundamental law. Then the youth continued, and his tone grew warmer, closer to the affairs of humankind. But in speaking of his great age, I also speak of his greatest gift to us mortals. This gift is the most precious thing a person can possess on their life's journey, and this gift is the capacity to love, for it is Eros who is our foremost guide to virtue. I know of no greater blessing for a young man than a worthy beloved, and for a beloved than one who loves him. For neither noble birth, nor wealth, nor honors, nor anything else can root within a person so steadfastly that which is the foundation of a worthy life, the aspiration toward what is beautiful, and the aversion to what is ugly, what is shameful. Think about what restrains us from wicked deeds. The law? The fear of punishment? Yes, but only to a certain point. The most powerful guardian of our soul is love. Could a person whose heart is ablaze with love commit an act that is base, that is cowardly in the eyes of the one they admire? Never. The very thought of being seen in a moment of weakness or dishonesty is more unbearable to them than any other punishment. Love becomes our most honest mirror, in which we strive to see ourselves only in the most favorable light. It is our silent, yet most just, Judge, whose condemnation we fear more than the condemnation of the entire world. The young man lifted his gaze from the flame and let it pass over those present. Imagine a warrior on the field of battle. Arrows whistle around him. Steel rings. Fear is a natural feeling. It can cause even the bravest to retreat. But if this warrior knows that the gaze of his beloved is upon him, fear recedes. He would rather throw himself into the very thick of the fighting and perish than show a moment of cowardice. Arrows breathes into him a courage that no commander's order could ever instill. Love transforms an ordinary person into a hero. If it were possible to create an army composed only of lovers and their beloveds, such an army would be invincible. They would fight side by side, inspiring one another to incredible feats, ashamed to show any weakness, and protecting each other to their very last breath. Such an army could conquer the whole world, guided not by a thirst for power, but by the strength of their mutual devotion. This is why I say that arrows gives us wings. This is not merely a beautiful metaphor. It is the deepest truth of his nature. Love elevates us above our mundane, selfish existence. It compels us to strive for something more than our own survival and comfort. It gives us wings to soar above the swamp of base passions, petty interests, and animal instincts. A poet inspired by love creates verses that live for ages. A sculptor who carries the image of his beloved in his heart is able to breathe life into cold stone. A lawmaker who loves his people creates just and wise laws. Love is the great engine of creativity, the great builder of all that is beautiful in our world. Without it, we would be only animals seeking food and warmth. With it, we become creators, capable of drawing near to the gods themselves. And these wings are so strong that they allow us to fly even above the greatest of all fears, the fear of death. Only lovers are truly ready to die for one another. The gods have given us many examples of this. Remember Alcestis, the daughter of Peleus. When the time came for her husband, Admetus, to die, the fates agreed to spare his life if someone else would voluntarily descend into the realm of shades in his place. Neither his old father nor his mother dared to make such a sacrifice. Only his wife Alcestis, moved by the power of her love, without hesitation, gave her life for his. Her act so impressed the gods that they returned her soul from the underworld. For such self-sacrifice is the highest manifestation of the divine power of Eros. Or remember Achilles, son of the goddess Thetis. He avenged the death of his friend and beloved Patroclus by killing Hector, though he knew that immediately afterward he himself would also die. He chose death beside the one he loved over a long life without him, and the gods honored his feat, granting him eternal glory and a place on the Isles of the Blessed. These stories teach us that true love does not fear sacrifice. It does not bargain or seek advantage. It gives everything, and in this self-surrender, it finds its own immortality. Eros gives us wings, not so that we might escape from the world, but so that we might serve it, adorn it, and if need be, give our life for it. The young man's voice grew quiet again, returning to its calm, river-like flow. Therefore, I maintain that Eros is the most ancient, the most revered, and the most powerful of the gods. He is our finest guide on the path to a worthy life. He teaches us courage through love, nobility through admiration, and immortality through self-sacrifice. And if we wish to live our lives rightly, we must follow him, listen to his quiet voice in our hearts, and allow him to grant us wings for the highest flight. The youth finished. He did not wait for applause or praise. He had simply expressed what he believed. And once again, silence fell. But now, it was different. It was filled with the images he had created, the image of the primordial God being born from chaos, the image of the invincible army of lovers, the image of Alcestis descending into the realm of the dead, and the image of Achilles choosing glory over life. And in this silence, each of those present, and you along with them, could feel something in the depths of their soul, unfurling its wings, preparing for its own, perhaps small, but still significant, flight. The idea had been sown, and it had already begun to grow. When the echo of the first speech had finally dissolved into the warm silence of the room, and the images of the winged god still hovered in the air, a deep and thoughtful quiet took hold. It seemed as though everything had been said, so complete and inspired was the young man's discourse. But after a few moments, the silence was broken by another voice. It belonged to a man of more mature years, one accustomed to precision in his phrasing and to analysis. His tone was no less calm, but in it one could sense not so much an idealistic fire as a desire for clarity, for the careful distinction between concepts. He was not arguing, but rather adding to, polishing the thought that had been expressed before him. My friend, he began, addressing the first speaker with a gentle respect, you were absolutely right to begin by stating that Eros must be praised. Your speech was worthy of this great god. But to simply say that Eros is one and to praise him without distinction, that would be far too simple, for not everything we do is equally praiseworthy. There are deeds that are beautiful, and there are those that are shameful. It is the same with love. If Eros were singular, then love too would be all of one kind, but we know that this is not so. Therefore, before we offer our praise, we must first distinguish which Eros is truly worthy of our glory. To understand this, let us recall that Eros is inseparable from the one whom he serves, from the goddess Aphrodite. And of Aphrodite, as we know, there is not one, but two. There exists the elder, the daughter of Uranus himself, of heaven. She was born without a mother. From the sea foam, we call her the heavenly Aphrodite, Urania. Her origin is pure, divine, unimplicated in the earthly and the corporeal. She is the embodiment of the elevated, the contemplative, the spiritual attraction. Her light is the steady, serene radiance of distant stars. Her breath is the pure air of mountain peaks. But there is also another Aphrodite, the younger. She is the daughter of Zeus and Dione. She was born from the union of the male and female principles, and therefore she is closer to us, to the earth. We call her the common Aphrodite, Pandemos. She is the goddess of earthly sensual love. She flourishes like the flowers in spring. She intoxicates like young wine. She is as changeable as the waters of a river. She is accessible to all, and her power manifests in the flesh, in the physical desire that is common to both humans and animals. The new speaker paused, allowing this distinction to take root in the minds of his listeners. Now in the room, besides the one-winged god, there appeared two feminine images, one austere and majestic like the starry sky, the other beautiful and earthly like a blossoming garden. And since there are two Aphrodites, there must also be two Erotes who accompany them. The Eros who serves the common Aphrodite is just like her common earthly. This is a vulgar love the love of simple, undemanding people. Such people love women and young men alike, and they love above all the body, not the soul. They seek not worthy partners, but those who yield most easily to their desire. Their only goal is to obtain pleasure, and they are indifferent to the means by which it is achieved. This is a love that knows neither honor nor constancy. It arrives like the wind and vanishes just as suddenly. This earthly eros is like a restless butterfly flitting from one flower to the next. He drinks the sweet nectar, but he does not linger for long. He is not interested in what will become of the flower when he flies away. He seeks only a new fragrance, a new bright color. His love is a love for the outer shell, but the beauty of the body is not eternal. The flower withers, the bright colors fade, and when this happens, the earthly eros, having found nothing else of value, disappears without a trace. He flies away, leaving behind only an emptiness and a bitter disappointment. This love is unwise, for it attaches itself to that which is impermanent. Utterly different is the heavenly Eros, who serves Aphrodite Urania. He is born of a goddess who has no part in the female, corporeal principle, and so his love is directed toward the masculine, toward that which is by nature stronger and endowed with reason. This is a love for youths, but not for their young flesh, but for the soul that is beginning to blossom. It is a love for the mind, for character, for virtue. Such a love does not seek an easy prize. It strives to find a worthy beloved, one whose soul promises a beautiful harvest. The heavenly Eros is not a butterfly, but a wise gardener. He finds a rare plant and does not seek to pluck its first flower. He patiently tends to it. He loosens the soil around it, protects it from weeds, and waters it with the pure water of knowledge. He wants the plant to grow strong, to mature, to reveal its full potential. His goal is not a fleeting pleasure, but a long-lasting shared growth. He knows that the beauty of the soul, unlike the beauty of the body, does not fade with the years, but only grows deeper and more multifaceted. Therefore, the love that is founded upon it is constant and faithful. It lasts a lifetime. For the object of its love, the soul, is eternal. Observe how differently these two kinds of love operate. The earthly lover acts in haste. He showers his chosen one with flattery, makes loud but empty promises, all to achieve his goal as quickly as possible. The heavenly lover, by contrast, is in no rush. He puts his beloved to the test. He creates distance. He examines the character of his chosen one, his desire for wisdom and self-improvement. For what is important to him is not simply to possess, but to find someone with whom he can share the path to truth. Our customs, though they may seem perplexing, in truth possess a subtle awareness of this very difference. We condemn one who yields quickly to advances, for this smacks of frivolity, of selling oneself, but we approve of one who resists, who demands time and trials, for this shows that he is seeking not mere pleasure, but a true worthy connection. We consider it beautiful when a lover is ready for any feat, even for what seems like slavish humiliation, sleeping on a doorstep, begging, swearing oaths. But all this is praiseworthy only when it is directed toward the attainment of virtue. If someone does these things for money or for office, we hold him in contempt. Thus, there is only one case in which gratifying a lover is a beautiful thing. It is when we do it for the sake of improvement. Heavenly love is a beautiful exchange. The lover helps his beloved to become wiser, more just, more courageous. He shares with him his knowledge, his life experience, and the beloved in turn responds with gratitude and the desire to become better, to live up to the high opinion that is held of him. In this union, both are enriched. This is not commerce, but a joint labor on the perfection of their souls. This is the one and only love that is worthy of being celebrated. This is the love that serves the heavenly Aphrodite. The speaker finished. His words, like a cool breeze, had brought clarity to the atmosphere in the room. He had not denied the wings of which the previous speaker had spoken. He had only shown that there are wings that can lift one to the very stars, and there are the wings of a mayfly which flutter for only a moment above the swamp of the mundane. He brought to the conversation order, classification, a philosophical precision. Now in the silence that fell once more complex questions were hovering. Not simply what is love, but which love is the true one. The listeners grew pensive, trying to recognize these two faces of Eros in their own lives, in their own feelings. The idea sown by the first speaker had produced a new double sprout. The conversation was becoming ever deeper, like a river that has passed the rapids and entered a calm yet profound channel. When the second speaker had finished, his words, like the sharp yet skillful instrument of a surgeon, had drawn a clear line in the consciousness of the listeners. The distinction between the two Erodes, the heavenly and the earthly, seemed exhaustive and final. A silence of agreement settled over the room, but it did not last long. The next to take the floor was a man whose posture and calm, attentive gaze revealed him to be a physician. This was Aristophanes. He gave an appreciative nod to the previous speaker, and when he spoke, his voice sounded methodical and confident, like that of a man accustomed to dealing not only with abstract ideas, but with matter, with life itself. Pausanias, he began, you made an excellent start and were very correct in distinguishing the two kinds of arrows. But it seems to me that your thought, while true, is somewhat incomplete. You have confined the action of this dual god only to the sphere of human relations. But I, through my own art, medicine, see that this great principle is at work in absolutely everything. The influence of Eros is not limited to the souls of men. It fills the bodies of animals and the plants that grow in the earth, and one might say, all that exists. Eros is not just a feeling, he is a universal law. Allow me to begin with what is closest to me, with medicine. Our art, in its essence, is nothing other than the science of the manifestations of Eros within the body. Health is the result of the dominion of the good, the heavenly Eros. What is a healthy body? It is a body in which the opposing principles, the hot and the cold, the dry and the moist, the bitter and the sweet, exist in a state of friendship and harmony. They do not destroy one another, but balance each other, creating a perfect unity. A skillful physician is one who understands the nature of this heavenly harmonious Eros and knows how to cultivate it in the patient's body. He knows when to support warmth and when to add coolness, when to saturate with moisture and when to allow to dry. He is like a wise ruler in the small state of the body, establishing peace between the warring elements. And what, then, is disease? It is nothing other than the victory of the other Eros, the bad, the earthly, the disorderly one. When this coarse Eros gains the upper hand, one of the elements begins to oppress another. An excess of cold engenders stagnation, an excess of heat, inflammation. Harmony is violated, friendship turns to war, and the body suffers. The task of the physician is to expel this evil Eros and to restore the dominion of the good one. We do this by reconciling the warring elements, compelling them to love one another again, and to live in concord. Thus, medicine is the art of managing the cosmic forces of love and enmity within the microcosm of the human organism. Love is health, enmity is disease. Eryximachus spoke, and his words, like a soothing balm, settled upon the soul. The image of the physician as a peacemaker, one who does not fight but reconciles, created a feeling of deep order and calm. He showed that even in sickness there is a logic, and there is a path to healing through the restoration of love as harmony. But let us look further, he continued, and we will see the very same principle in another great art, in music. At first glance, music, like medicine, consists in the joining of opposites. What is music if not the harmonious combination of high and low sounds, of fast and slow rhythms? If one were to simply mix them chaotically, the result would not be music, but a dreadful cacophony, a war of sounds. This would be a manifestation of that same earthly, disorderly eros. But when a true artist arrives, a bearer of the heavenly eros, he performs a miracle. He does not destroy the opposites. He does not force all the sounds to be equally high or low. He establishes between them concord, order, love. He finds for each sound, for each rhythm, its proper place, where it not only does not interfere with the others, but actually enhances their beauty. The high note begins to love the low note. The fast rhythm becomes friends with the slow, and from this love of opposites, harmony is born, music is born. Imagine a great orchestra. Each instrument has its own voice, its own character. The violin sings high and sweetly, the double bass hums low and deep, the flute chirps, and the drum beats out a clear rhythm. If each of them played whatever it pleased, it would be unbearable. But the conductor, the embodiment of the musical eros, unites them. He gives a sign to each, and obeying him, they begin a conversation. They complement one another. They argue and reconcile, creating a single magnificent tapestry of sound. Music is the proof that love is the principle that creates beauty from the chaos of contradictions. The listeners, it seemed, could already hear this cosmic music. The image of love had expanded, moving beyond the limits of human relationships and the body, and now resounded in the harmony of the spheres. And this law is at work everywhere, the physician continued, extending his idea to the entire world. Look at the seasons. All of our nature, all of agriculture, depends on the harmonious combination of these same opposites, warmth and cold, moisture and dryness. When the good, orderly eros presides over them, they converge in the correct proportion. Warm rains are followed by gentle sun. The earth yields a generous harvest. The air is pure, and animals and people are healthy. This is love in nature. But when the other eros intervenes, the excessive, the violent one, calamity strikes. Too much heat brings drought, and all living things perish from thirst. Too much rain, and floods wash away the crops. A frost that strikes at the wrong time kills the buds on the trees. All of these are the diseases of nature, arising from the enmity of the elements, from the dominion of the earthly, destructive eros. Even astronomy, the science of the motion of celestial bodies, abides by the same law. Our entire cosmos, with its wondrous order, with its cyclical movement of planets and stars, is nothing other than the triumph of the heavenly eros, who has established eternal harmony and love throughout the universe. And finally, think of the art of divination, of our relationship with the gods. This too is a sphere of action for the two erodes. Sacrifices, prayers, rituals, all of these are ways of establishing friendship and harmony between mortals and immortals. When we honor the gods, when our actions are filled with piety, we cultivate the good eros, and the gods answer us with their favor. But when people act impiously, when they are filled with pride, they engender enmity between themselves and the heavens. And then come plagues, pestilence, natural disasters. The task of the priest, or the seer, like that of the physician, is to be a mediator, to diagnose the state of relations between humans and the gods, and to restore the lost harmony. Therefore concluded Eryximachus, and his voice took on a special solemnity. The power of Eros is truly great and all-encompassing. It permeates absolutely everything. But we must remember that Eros is dual, and only that Eros which strives for the good and is realized through order and measure, whether in human relations, in music, in medicine, or in our relations with the gods, is the source of all that is blessed. He grants us peace, friendship, concord, and happiness. His dominion is that very cosmic harmony of which we are all called to be a part. With these words, the physician fell silent. It was as if he had assembled for his listeners a vast mosaic where every single piece, from a cell in the body to a distant star, found its place in the unified picture of the universe, held together by the law of love. His speech did not lull to sleep, but rather brought order to the consciousness. It bestowed a feeling of profound belonging to a magnificent, harmonious whole. In a world governed by such a law, there is no place for chaos and fear. There is only the majestic, endless dance of opposites, guided by the quiet, yet omnipotent hand of love. The next to speak should have been Aristophanes, the famous comic playwright, but earlier, suffering from a bout of persistent hiccups, he had graciously yielded his turn to the physician. Now, however, after Eryximachus's simple advice had helped to quell this minor rebellion of the body, the poet was ready to take the floor. His entrance disrupted the grand, systematic procession of the discourse, promising something entirely different, not an analysis, but a story, not a law, but a myth. He sat up straighter, and a mischievous, yet good-natured smile appeared on his face. His voice was completely unlike those of the previous speakers. It was not the idealistic hymn of a youth, not the precise analysis of a mature man, and not the methodical lecture of a physician. It was the voice of a storyteller, one capable of seeing the comical in the magnificent and the magnificent in the comical, a voice that knew how to speak of the deepest things through a simple yet wondrous story. Eryximachus, he began, addressing the physician, and all of you, my friends. It seems to me that until now, no one has truly understood or felt the full power of Eros. For if people understood it, they would have erected for him the grandest temples and altars, and would have brought him the most splendid sacrifices. But this does not happen, and it is all because we do not know the true nature of humanity and what it endured in ancient times. To understand love, we must first understand ourselves, understand our most ancient wound. Therefore, I will try to reveal this secret to you. My speech may, perhaps, seem amusing to you, but beneath its whimsical shell hides a deep and sorrowful truth. I will tell you a legend. He paused, and all those present, intrigued, leaned forward. Even the flickering light of the lamps seemed to grow quiet, preparing to listen. Once, in primordial times, Aristophanes began, and his voice became low and mysterious. The nature of human beings was not at all as it is now. Firstly, there were not two sexes, but three. There was a male sex, a female sex, and there was a third which combined the features of both, the androgynous. Secondly, each human was a whole spherical being. The back and sides formed a perfect circle. Each creature had 4 arms and 4 legs, 2 heads upon a single neck that looked in opposite directions, and consequently 2 faces. Everything was doubled. These beings were astonishingly strong and agile. They could move forward and backward without turning around, and when they needed to run quickly, they would support themselves on all 8 of their limbs and roll, like a wheel, with incredible speed. And these 3 genders originated from 3 principles: the male from the sun, the female from the earth, and the androgynous from the moon. For the moon, as you know, combines the properties of both the sun and the earth. They were whole, self-sufficient, and mighty, and this might gave birth within them to an incredible pride. They conceived a terrible thing to ascend to the heavens and challenge the gods themselves. They began to build a stairway to Olympus itself in order to cast the celestial beings from their thrones. The gods deliberated for a long time about what to do with these insolent creatures. To destroy them with thunder and lightning, as they once had the giants, would be unwise, for then the honor and the sacrifices that people brought to the gods would also disappear. But to tolerate such audacity was also impossible. And then Zeus, after long deliberation, devised a cunning plan. "I know what to do," he said. "I will preserve the humans, but I will make them much weaker, and then they will cease their rampages. I will cut each of them in half. They will become weaker, and for us there will be a double benefit. There will be twice as many of them, and therefore we will receive twice as many sacrifices." No sooner said than done. Zeus set about cutting the people in half, as one slices berries for preserving or cuts a hard-boiled egg with a single hair. It was a gruesome spectacle, and he ordered the god Apollo to turn the face and neck of each half toward the side of the cut, so that the person, by constantly seeing the evidence of their own mutilation, would be more submissive. Apollo was also to heal the wounds. He gathered all the skin in one place, on the stomach, and tied it in a tight knot, which we now call the navel. This little scar on our body is a perpetual reminder of our former wholeness and of the terrible punishment for our pride. Aristophanes fell silent, and in the quiet that followed, everyone instinctively touched their own stomach, feeling this ancient mark, the meaning of which they had never before considered. The story, which had begun as an amusing fable, was taking on ghastly, tragic features. But the most terrible part began afterward. The storyteller continued. When the bodies were divided, each half, with an incredible desperate yearning, rushed toward its other half. They would embrace, entwine their arms and legs, striving to grow back together into a single whole. They wanted nothing else. In these embraces, they forgot about food and drink, about all their affairs, and thus they would perish from hunger and inaction. It was an epidemic of longing, an epidemic of despair. When one half died, the one that remained would wander the world alone, searching for someone with whom it could again entwine itself, be it with the half of a woman or the half of a man, but it was no longer the same. Their soul was searching only for its own, its native, its lost part. This, my friends, is the true origin of love. Love, or eros, is nothing other than a thirst for wholeness. It is the innate, instinctive striving of each half to find its other half and to reunite with it. We are all but symbols, fragments of ancient humans, like a flounder cut in two, and each of us, all our lives, is searching for our corresponding fragment. Those men who were part of the ancient androgynous being now seek women, and the women from that same half seek men. Those women who originate from the primordial female being pay no mind to men, but are drawn to other women, and the men who are fragments of the original male being seek a man's love. And when one of us, no matter their gender, meets that very one, their other half, oh, what a miracle occurs. They are overcome by an incredible feeling of closeness, of friendship, of love. They do not want to be apart, even for a short time. They are ready to live their whole lives together in an embrace. And if you were to ask such a couple what it is they want from one another, they would not be able to answer, for it is not merely a matter of physical closeness. The soul of each is yearning for something else, something that it cannot express in words, but can only guess at and feel. It yearns to dissolve into the beloved, to merge with them, to become a single whole being once more. If the god Hephaestus, with his smith's tools, were to approach such a couple as they lay in an embrace and ask, "What is it you want, you people?" Perhaps you want me to fuse you together, for me to weld you into a single being, so that from two there will be one, and you will be inseparable your whole life, and after death, in the realm of Hades, you would be a single shared shadow. Not a single couple would refuse. Each would admit that this is precisely what they had dreamed of their entire life, to be united with their other half and to restore their ancient whole nature. Aristophanes looked around at his listeners, and in his gaze now there was not a shadow of laughter, only a deep compassion. Therefore, what is called love, he concluded, is the yearning for wholeness and the striving for it. We were once one whole, and now, because of our transgression, the gods have scattered us, like the Arcadians dispersed across the world. And a constant threat hangs over us that if we anger the gods, they will cut us in half yet again, and we will be forced to walk about like those figures on tombstones, sawn down the length of the nose. That is why each of us must live in piety. And Eros, he is our greatest friend, our helper, and our healer. He cures our primary ailment, loneliness. He leads us to that which is akin to us, to our other half. He gives us hope that if we revere the gods, he will one day restore our original nature, heal us, and return to us our lost bliss and happiness. This is my speech on Eros. Perhaps it is not as refined as yours, but I hope it has touched upon the very essence of the matter. When Aristophanes had finished his story, a silence enveloped his room, but it was of a completely different quality than before. This was not a silence of agreement or of intellectual contemplation. It was a silence of a deep personal resonance. Each listener seemed to have retreated into themselves, trying this wondrous and sorrowful legend of lost wholeness on their own soul. The image of a lonely half, wandering through the world, had touched the most secret strings, and in the eyes of many, a faint glimmer of compassion appeared, both for humanity as a whole and for themselves. This speech had not calmed, but had rather stirred the heart, yet it was a bright stirring, one filled with the hope of a miraculous encounter. And so, in this atmosphere of quiet melancholy and dreamy expectation, the time came for the master of the house, Agathon, to speak. He was a tragic poet, a man for whom the beauty of the word and the elegance of form were the very essence of life. His recent victory in the theatrical competition was the very reason for this banquet. He radiated a sense of satisfaction and confidence. When he began to speak, his voice flowed through the room like music. Every word was carefully weighed, every phrase polished to perfection. This was not a narrative and not an analysis. This was a hymn. My friends, he began, his gaze gliding over the faces of those present. It seems to me that all the previous speakers, for all their wisdom, have made a single error. They did not so much praise the god Eros himself as they spoke of the blessings he bestows upon mankind. They described his deeds, his influence, his gifts. But when we wish to truly praise someone, we must first describe what he is like in himself, and only then speak of what he does for others. Therefore, I will attempt to correct this error. I will tell you, first, of the nature of Eros himself, of his essence, and then I will speak of his gifts. Thus I maintain that of all the blessed gods, Eros, if I may be so bold, is the most blessed, for he is the most beautiful and the most perfect. And he is the most beautiful because, contrary to the words of Phaedrus, he is the youngest of all the gods, and the proof of this he carries within himself. Eros does not simply dislike old age, he detests it and flees from it with all his might. He is the eternal companion of youth. He is always to be found among the young, for like, as they say, is always drawn to like. He himself is an eternal youth. Look at him. He does not walk upon the earth, which is covered with the wrinkles of age. He does not tread upon hard stone. His kingdom is in the softest, most tender places in the universe. He lives and makes his nest in the souls and hearts of gods and men, but not in all of them. If he encounters a soul with a hard, rigid character, he passes it by, but where he finds softness, tenderness, pliancy, there he weaves his nest. He is like a spring wind that touches only the youngest, most delicate petals. He is the morning dew that settles upon flowers that have just opened. That is why he is eternally young and beautiful, for his home is the eternal springtime of the soul. Agathon spoke, and his words painted a wondrous image before the listeners. Eros ceased to be a formidable cosmic force or the cause of an ancient tragedy. He was transformed into a beautiful, radiant youth, dancing among the flowers. Besides being the most tender, he is also incredibly supple and fluid. His being has no rigid form. If it were solid, he would not be able to so imperceptibly penetrate souls. He would not be able to envelop them from all sides. He is akin to pure water, which takes the form of any vessel. He pours into the heart and fills it with himself, not breaking its walls, but gently expanding them. He seeps through all obstacles like the fragrance of the most exquisite perfume. His beauty lies not only in his appearance, but also in this wondrous flowing grace. And of course, he lives amidst beauty. A god who is beauty itself cannot tolerate ugliness. That is why his home is in blossoming meadows, in gardens where the sweetest aromas drift. He himself is like a flower, delicate, colorful, fragrant. He feeds on beauty, and he himself radiates it. His touch causes all things to blossom, but beauty and tenderness are not all. My Eros is not a powerless, fragile creature. He possesses the highest virtues. Firstly, he is just, for Eros never commits violence and never suffers it himself. No one serves love by compulsion. Any service rendered to love is voluntary, and where there is voluntary agreement between two parties, justice reigns, as the laws of our city say. Secondly, he is incredibly temperate. Temperance is power over passions and desires. And is there any passion stronger than love? There is none. All other desires bow before it. And if Eros reigns over all other desires, then he is the very embodiment of the highest temperance and self-possession. Thirdly, he is the most courageous. Even the formidable god of war, Ares, cannot stand against Eros. The legends do not tell us that Eros was captured by Ares, but the opposite, that Ares was taken captive by his love for Aphrodite. And he who vanquishes the most courageous is by logic the most courageous of all. The gentle hand of love is stronger than the iron sword of war. And finally, he is the most wise. He is a great creator and poet, for no one can teach others what he himself cannot do. And it is Eros who makes a poet of every one of us, even the most uncreative person. The moment love touches him, begins to write verses. This is the best proof that Eros is a master of the poetic art, but his wisdom extends much further. It was he who was the teacher of the other gods. He taught Apollo to shoot a bow and play the cithara. He taught the muses their arts. He taught Hephaestus his smithing craft. He taught Athena the art of weaving. Even Zeus himself learned from him the art of governing gods and men. All the order and beauty on Olympus were established only when Eros appeared among the gods. Before him, their lives were filled with chaos and struggle. Agathon's speech reached its peak. It was as if he had built for the god Eros a magnificent temple of words, adorning it with the columns of virtues and painting its walls with frescoes of divine beauty. His Eros was an ideal deity, young, beautiful, good, just, courageous, and wise. This was an aristocratic god, the embodiment of all the best one could possibly imagine. Such is our God. Agathon was concluding, and his voice once more sounded like the music of a solemn hymn. And from such a God, of course, come corresponding gifts. It is he who brings us peace and banishes enmity. He fills our gatherings, like this one, with a spirit of friendship and unity. He is our leader in dances, festivals, and sacrifices. He bestows gentleness and drives out coarseness. He is generous with kindness and miserly with ill will. He is merciful and good. He is a wonder to the wise and an object of admiration for the gods. He is a desire for those who do not have him, and a treasure for those who possess him. He is the father of luxury, of tenderness, of elegance, of joy, of passion, and of longing. He cares for the good and neglects the wicked. In labor, in fear, in dreams, in conversation, he is our finest pilot, defender, companion, and savior. He is the ornament of gods and men, and each of us must follow him, singing his praises in beautiful hymns and taking part in that divine dance with which he enchants the hearts of all gods and men. Agathon fell silent. The room erupted in applause. Everyone was enraptured by the beauty and elegance of his speech. It was a true masterpiece of rhetorical art. He had dispelled the somber contemplation inspired by Aristophanes and had filled the space with light, joy, and aesthetic delight. His words, like a goblet of sweet wine, had intoxicated and comforted his listeners. When the last of the applause, a generous tribute to Agathon's poetic talent, had faded, the room was once again enveloped in silence. But this time, it was different. It was a silence of satiation, the quiet that follows a lavish feast for the ears. The image of the beautiful young and omnipotent god Eros seemed to have filled the entire space, gleaming like a perfect marble statue. It seemed the conversation had been concluded on the highest, most beautiful note, and it was at that very moment that all eyes, one by one, turned to a man who until now had been sitting almost motionless, with a faint, enigmatic smile upon his lips. This was Socrates. He had neither the fame of a poet nor the status of a physician. His face was plain, even unattractive, and his clothing was modest. But there was something in his presence that made even the most confident speakers feel unsure of themselves. It was the aura of a man who asserts nothing, but questions everything, searching not for beautiful words, but for the naked, unadorned truth. Socrates cast a calm gaze over everyone, waited a moment, and then addressed Agathon with a feigned simplicity that concealed a subtle irony. "My dear Agathon," he began, and his voice sounded even and mundane, a striking contrast to the poet's melodic declamation. "Your speech was truly marvelous. As I was listening to it, especially the final, most exquisite part, I was reminded of the famous orator Gorgias, and I felt utterly awkward. I realized how ridiculous I was when I agreed, after all of you, to praise Eros. I in my naivete thought that to give praise one must speak the truth about the subject, whatever that truth may be. I supposed one only needed to select the most important true facts and present them in the best possible order. I was full of hope that I would be able to speak well, because I know the truth. But now I see that the art of true praise consists of something else entirely. It consists of attributing to the subject as many of the most beautiful qualities as possible, regardless of whether they are actually his. If some of this happens to be true, wonderful. If not, no matter, for our agreement, it seems, was to pretend that we are praising Eros, not to actually praise him. That is why you have created such beautiful, magnificent pictures without troubling yourselves about their correspondence to reality, and I, a simpleton, am incapable of such a speech. I can only speak the truth. And if you are interested in hearing not a refined hymn, but a simple and truthful account of Eros, I am prepared to speak, but I will speak in my own manner, without attempting to compete with your eloquence. Tell me, Phaedrus, is such a speech needed here? A speech in which there will be nothing but the truth. After Phaedrus and the other guests readily agreed to listen to the truth in any form, Socrates once again turned to the master of the house. "Allow me, Agathon, to ask you a few short questions, so that we may come to an agreement on the foundation upon which I will build my account. It will be easier this way." Agathon, buoyed by the success of his speech, confidently agreed. He did not suspect that this quiet and subtle turn from monologue to dialogue was the beginning of a complete restructuring of everything that had been said before. Socrates was not about to build a new temple. He was about to gently, stone by stone, dismantle the beautiful but fragile temple that the poet had just erected. Tell me, my dear friend, Socrates began, so gently it was as if he were asking for advice. Is Eros the love of something, or is he the love of nothing? Of something, of course, answered Agathon. Good, continued Socrates, as if unraveling a thread. And now tell me, does Eros desire that which he is the love of? Yes, of course he desires it, the poet confirmed with confidence. And tell me, does he desire it and possess it at the same time, or does he desire it when he does not possess it? This question was posed just as softly, but within it, a trap was already hidden. Agathon paused for a moment in thought. I suppose when he does not possess it, he replied. Excellent. Socrates nodded. Consider, is this not a necessity rather than a mere supposition? Can someone who is large desire to be large, or someone who is strong desire to be strong? That is impossible, according to what we have agreed. Correct, because if someone already possesses these qualities, he cannot desire them. If someone says, I, being healthy, desire to be healthy, he actually means that he desires for his health to be preserved in the future. He desires that which he does not yet have, future health. Therefore, desire is always directed toward that which we do not have, that which we lack, that which is not present in us. Socrates spoke slowly. Each step of his reasoning was simple and obvious. It was as if he were leading Agathon by the hand along a familiar path. Agathon agreed with every step, not noticing that this path was leading him to a precipice that would destroy his entire speech. Let us return to Eros, Socrates proposed, and his voice grew even quieter. You said, if I remember correctly, that all the affairs of the gods were set in order through the love of beauty, for there is no love of ugliness. Yes, I said that. And that is true. And if so, is not Eros first and foremost the love of beauty? Yes, confirmed Agathon. And did we not agree that he who desires something does not possess that which he desires? Yes, we agreed. Socrates made a barely perceptible pause. The decisive moment had arrived. Therefore he uttered, softly but clearly, Eros does not possess beauty, but desires it. He experiences a lack of it. It would seem so. Agathon was forced to admit. His confidence began to melt away. Then how can you maintain, Socrates completed his logical chain, that that which does not have a drop of beauty within it is beautiful? A tense silence fell upon the room. The beautiful marble statue, erected by Agathon, had crumbled to dust from a single quiet touch from the philosopher. Agathon was forced to admit that he had contradicted himself. I think, Socrates, he said in bewilderment, that I simply did not know what I was talking about. Your speech was beautiful all the same. Agathon Socrates reassured him without a shadow of gloating. But tell me one more thing. Does it not seem to you that all that is good is also beautiful? Yes, it seems so. Therefore, if Eros is lacking in beauty, then he is also lacking in the good. I cannot argue with you, Socrates. The poet answered quietly. Let it be as you say. No, my dear Agathon, Socrates smiled. You cannot argue with the truth, for to argue with Socrates is not at all difficult. After Socrates, with such ruthless gentleness, had taken Agathon's speech apart, a silence full of expectation fell upon the room. Everyone understood that this was not merely an act of destruction, it was the necessary clearing of a space for the erection of a new, more solid structure. And so, casting a calm gaze over his friends, Socrates began his account, but his voice had changed. The irony was gone. The game was over. He spoke now as a student, reverently recounting the words of his teacher. "What I am about to tell you," he began, "is not my own wisdom. I am only relaying what I was once taught by a priestess from Mentanina, a woman named Diotima. She was wise in many things, and it was she who revealed to me the true nature of love." Our conversation was very similar to the one that just took place between Agathon and myself. I, being young and self-assured at the time, came to her and began to expound my thoughts on arrows, which by coincidence were almost the same as those we have heard today from our dear poet. I too said that Eros was a great god, and that he was the love of what is beautiful. And then Diotima, with a patient smile, began to ask me the very same questions I have just asked Agathon. And I, just as he did, was forced to conclude, step by step, that Eros, in striving for the beautiful and the good, cannot himself be either beautiful or good. I was bewildered. "What does this mean, Diotima?" I asked. "Is Eros then ugly and evil?" "Hush, hush." She stopped me gently. "Do you truly think that everything that is not beautiful must necessarily be ugly, or that all that is not wise is ignorance? Do you not know that there exists something in between wisdom and ignorance? For instance, to have a correct opinion about something but be unable to prove it. This is not yet knowledge, but it is no longer ignorance. It is the same in all other things. Do not compel that which is not beautiful to be ugly. And Eros, not being a god, is not a mortal either. Who is he then?" I asked. "He is a great spirit, a great daimon, Socrates," she answered. "He abides in the middle ground between gods and mortals. And what is his power? He is a mediator and an interpreter. He conveys the prayers and sacrifices of humans to the gods, and in return brings to humans the commands and rewards from the gods. Occupying the middle space, he fills the void between heaven and earth, binding everything into a single whole. Through him operate the arts of seers, the power of priests, magic and sorcery. A god never mingles directly with a human. It is only through spirits such as Eros that the gods communicate with mortals, both in waking life and in dreams. And he who is wise in these matters is a spiritual man, while he who is wise only in crafts is a mere artisan. And there are many such mediating spirits, but Eros is one of the most important. Diotima told me the wondrous story of his birth. When Aphrodite was born, the gods held a great banquet. Among the guests was the god Poros, resource, ingenuity, plenty. Having eaten his fill and grown drunk on nectar, he went out into the garden of Zeus and fell asleep. And at that moment, hoping to glean something from the festive table, a poor beggar named Peenia, poverty, need, came to the gates. Seeing the sleeping Poros, she decided this was her chance to be rid of her eternal poverty, and resolved to have a child by him. She lay down beside him and conceived Eros. Since he was conceived on the birthday of Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty, he forever became her admirer and servant. But due to his parentage, he inherited the traits of both his parents. From his mother Peenia, he was destined to be forever poor, rough, unkempt, barefoot, and homeless. He always sleeps on the bare ground, under the open sky, on the doorsteps of others' houses. He is eternally in a state of want, forever yearning for something. But from his father Poros, he inherited completely different traits. He is brave, bold, and resolute. He is a skillful hunter, forever tracking all that is beautiful and good. He is inventive, always full of designs. He is a philosopher, striving his whole life for wisdom. He is a formidable sorcerer and sophist. By his nature, he is neither immortal like a god, nor mortal like a human. On one and the same day, he can blossom and live, then die and be resurrected again, thanks to his father's resourcefulness. But everything he acquires immediately slips through his fingers, so Eros is never truly rich or poor. He is the true philosopher, for the gods do not philosophize, because they are already wise. The ignorant do not philosophize, because they believe they already know everything. It is he who is in the middle, who philosophizes, he who knows that he lacks wisdom, and therefore strives for it with all his soul. And Eros is just like that. He loves wisdom, for wisdom is one of the most beautiful of all things, and love is the love of what is beautiful. After this story, Socrates continued, I asked Diotima, very well, if Eros is such, then what use is he to humans? That is precisely what I am about to explain, she replied. Love is the desire to possess the good forever. All humans, Socrates, are pregnant, both in body and in soul, and when they reach a certain age, our nature demands that we give birth, and we can only give birth in beauty, not in ugliness. The union of a man and a woman is a birth, and this is a divine affair, for pregnancy and birth are the manifestation of the immortal principle within a mortal creature. Therefore, love is not simply the desire for the beautiful. Love is the desire for birth and creation in beauty. Why specifically for birth? I asked. Because birth is the only way by which a mortal thing can partake of eternity and immortality, and we have agreed that love desires to possess the good forever. Therefore, love must also, of necessity, desire immortality. Thus Diotima revealed to me that love is our human way of struggling against death. Not only humans, but animals too, when they are seized by the desire to procreate, are ready for anything, even death, to leave offspring behind them. It is an instinctive striving for eternity. We do not even remain the same throughout our own lives. Our knowledge, our habits, our thoughts are constantly changing. The old dies, the new is born, and in the same way, we renew ourselves through our children, leaving behind a new being, similar to ourselves. But there is another, higher kind of pregnancy. It is pregnancy of the soul. Some people are pregnant, not in body, but in soul, and they carry within them, not children, but that which is proper for a soul to bear, reason, and the other virtues. These are the poets, the artists, the inventors, and most importantly, the lawmakers who create order in states. Such people seek not a beautiful body, but a beautiful soul, in which they might be able to give birth to their spiritual children, ideas, laws, poems. The bond between such people is far stronger than that of family, and their children are far more enduring than children of flesh and blood. Homer, Hesiod, Lycurgus, they left behind them descendants who brought them eternal glory and immortality. And it was here, said Socrates, and his voice became even quieter and more solemn, that Diotima led me to the highest mysteries of love. She said, he who wishes to follow the right path must begin in his early youth. He must come to love one beautiful body, and in communion with it, he will give birth to beautiful thoughts. This is the first step. Then he must realize that the beauty which resides in this one body is sister to the beauty that resides in any other body. And if he wishes to seek beauty as an idea, it would be foolish to think that it is not one and the same in all bodies. Having understood this, he will become a lover of all beautiful bodies, and his frantic passion for one will diminish. This is the second step. After this, he must begin to value the beauty of the soul far more highly than the beauty of the body. He will be able to love a person even of a plain appearance if he sees in him a beautiful soul, and he will care for him, giving birth to thoughts that make the young better. Thus he will be compelled to see the beauty that lies in customs and in laws. He will understand that all this beauty is akin, and that the beauty of the body is something of little consequence. This is the third step. From customs and laws, he must proceed to the sciences, that he may see the beauty of knowledge. Looking upon beauty in its great variety, he will no longer be the slave of a single one of its manifestations, like a lovesick boy who adores one body or one custom. He will turn to the vast sea of beauty, and contemplating it, will give birth to countless beautiful and magnificent thoughts and ideas in his love of wisdom, in philosophy. This is the fourth step. And so, step by step, growing stronger and ascending, he will, at the very end of his journey, as if in a sudden flash, see it, beauty itself, the idea of beauty. It is a wondrous sight, Socrates. This beauty is eternal. It does not come into being or pass away. It does not increase or diminish. It is not beautiful in one respect and ugly in another. It is not a face or hands or any other part of the body. It is not some speech or some piece of knowledge. It does not live in any other being on earth or in heaven. It exists by itself, eternally one and unchanging, and all the multitude of beautiful things in the world partake of it in such a way that while they come to be and are destroyed, it is not in any way changed. That then, concluded Diotima, is the life that a person should live in the contemplation of beauty itself. When you see it, gold and fine clothing and beautiful youths will seem as nothing to you. And only then, looking upon true beauty and communing with it, will a person be able to give birth, not to phantoms of virtue, but to true virtue. And he who has given birth to and nurtured true virtue becomes a friend of the gods and attains true immortality, insofar as that is at all possible for a human. This is what Diotima told me. Socrates finished his long account, and I believed her, and now I try to persuade others that on this path to eternal beauty there is no better helper for humankind than Eros. Therefore I call on everyone to honor him and to follow his path, ascending the ladder from earthly beauty to the divine, eternal beauty. When Socrates finished recounting the words of Diotima, a silence fell upon the room, deeper than any that had come before. This was no longer a silence of expectation, nor one of agreement or emotional experience. It was the silence of contemplation. The philosopher had not simply proposed a new theory of love, he had charted a course, a map of an inner journey that leads from the darkest depths of human desire to the brightest peaks of divine revelation. And now, in this silence, every listener, and you along with them, stood at the foot of that very ladder, looking up, trying to imagine what awaited at its summit. Let us not rush. Let us mentally walk the final, highest steps of this wondrous path. Let us imagine a soul that has already learned to see the single beauty in all beautiful bodies. It has already freed itself from the frantic passion for one person. Its love has become wider, calmer, more like a quiet, deep lake than a turbulent stream. It has already understood that the beauty of the soul is far more precious than the beauty of the body, and has learned to love virtue, character, and reason. Its gaze has grown deeper, but even this is not the summit. Following its wise guide, the soul ascends higher. It begins to see beauty not only in individual people, but also in what they create, in just laws, in wise customs, in the harmonious order of a state. Its love becomes even more expansive. It no longer loves a personality, but the order, the structure, the idea that lies at the foundation of the common good. Its heart expands, embracing a love for entire peoples, for the very idea of civilization. From here, the path leads to the beauty of knowledge. The soul turns its gaze to the sciences, to philosophy, to art. It sees a wondrous beauty in the perfection of a mathematical theorem, in the harmony of astronomical calculations, in the depth of a philosophical thought. It is no longer a slave to any single concrete image of beauty. It, as Diotima said, emerges into the boundless sea of beauty. Imagine this state. It is like sailing in a boat out of a narrow river inlet, where only the familiar shores are visible, and into the open, endless ocean. All around there is only the horizon, the water, and the sky. It is a feeling of limitless freedom, of elation, of intellectual joy. The soul bathes in this sea, giving birth, one after another, to beautiful, magnificent thoughts, nourished by the very love of wisdom. And it is here, when the soul is completely immersed in this sea, when it has been purified of all earthly attachments, when it has been prepared by the long path of ascent, that the miracle occurs. It is not the result of a logical conclusion. It is not a reward for effort. It is a sudden flash of light, a moment of revelation. Suddenly, from out of nowhere, before its inner eye, she appears, beauty itself, the idea of beauty. Let us try to imagine what this is. The words here are powerless. Diotima said that first and foremost, this beauty is eternal. It was never born and will never die. It does not grow and does not diminish. It simply is, always. It is not beautiful only in part, and in another part, ugly. As for example, a person might have a beautiful face, but an unpleasant character. No, it is absolutely, totally beautiful from every angle and in every respect. It is not beautiful at one time and unattractive at another, like a spring flower that withers in the autumn. Its beauty does not depend on time. It is not beautiful to some and ugly to others. Its beauty is not subjective. It is absolute and universal. It is not the beauty of a face or of hands or of any other part of the body. It has no form that can be seen with physical eyes. It is not the beauty of a speech or a thought. It is not a concept that can be grasped by the intellect. It does not live in something else, not in a living creature, not on the earth, not in the sky. It is not dependent on anything. It exists by itself, eternally one, identical to itself. What, then, is it? One can imagine it as the sun. We see the beautiful world around us, the trees, the flowers, the faces of people, but we see them only because they are illuminated by the sun. They are beautiful only because of its light. They are merely reflecting its rays. We can admire the beauty of illuminated objects, but the true source of all this beauty is the sun itself. So it is with the idea of beauty. All the beautiful things in the world are but its faint, temporary reflections. They are born and die. They appear and disappear, but she, their source, remains unchanged. Or imagine it as a boundless, quiet spring from which all the rivers and streams of beauty in the world flow forth. Every beautiful poem, every harmonious melody, every noble heart is but a drop of water from this eternal spring. And when the soul, having traveled the long path, finally reaches it, it ceases to chase after individual drops. It kneels at the source itself and drinks eternity from it. A person who has seen this, even for a moment, is changed forever. Turning their inner gaze back to the ordinary world, they see it completely differently. Gold, luxury, power, even the most beautiful human bodies that once seemed the pinnacle of desire, now look like children's toys, like dim copies, like shadows on the wall of a cave. Their soul is freed from slavery to these transient things. It has found the true treasure, and now it cannot be fooled by counterfeits. And it is in this state, as Diotima said, that a person gives birth not to phantoms of virtue, but to true virtue, for they are in communion not with a shadow of beauty, but with truth itself. Their actions are now motivated not by a desire for fame or recognition, but by a deep inner knowledge of what is truly good and beautiful. They become a friend of the gods, for they have seen that which the gods themselves behold, and they achieve true immortality, for their soul has become one with the eternal and the unchanging. This is the summit of the ascent. This is the final goal of love, not the possession of another, not pleasure, not the continuation of the species in a physical sense, but this quiet, dazzling contemplation. It is the return of the soul to its home, to its true fatherland, the world of eternal ideas. In the deep contemplative silence that had settled after Socrates' account, it seemed as though eternity itself had entered the room. The image of the boundless sea of beauty filled the consciousness, and each listener journeyed upon its waves into their own depths. It was a moment of perfect harmony, of philosophical ecstasy, when the entire world seemed intelligible and ordered. And it was precisely at this moment of perfect quiet that a loud knocking came from outside, from the door, then again and again, accompanied by drunken shouts and the piercing merry sounds of a flute. The entire sublime atmosphere shattered in an instant. Those present exchanged glances, as if awakened from a sweet dream. The knocking grew louder, and finally the doors burst open with a crash, admitting a whirlwind of noise, night air, and chaos into the room. On the threshold, barely able to stand and leaning on the shoulder of a young flute girl stood the first beauty of Athens, the brilliant politician and general Alcibiades. He was very drunk. On his head he wore a thick wreath of ivy and violets, from which ribbons cascaded down. "Greetings, gentlemen," he proclaimed loudly, trying to focus his gaze. "Will you accept into your company a man who is already thoroughly soaked, or should I just leave these wreaths for the victor and depart? For I have come to crown the head of the wisest and most beautiful, that is to say, Agathon." With these words swaying, he entered the room, and his friends, laughing, helped him to a seat. He took off part of his wreath and solemnly placed it on Agathon's head, covering his eyes with the ribbons. Because of this, he did not immediately notice who was sitting beside him, but when the wreath was adjusted and he caught sight of his neighbor, he started and recoiled. "Oh gods, what is this? Socrates," he exclaimed with a mixture of horror and delight. "You've set an ambush for me again. It's a habit of yours to appear suddenly where I least expect you, and of course you've settled yourself right next to the most beautiful man in the room. You always do this." Socrates smiled calmly and asked Agathon to protect him from Alcibiades' jealousy. The conversation turned into a cheerful, drunken squabble. The magnificent philosophical disputation had devolved into a friendly comedy. When the noise subsided a little, the guests invited Alcibiades to join their agreement to deliver a speech in praise of Eros. "No, gentlemen," he replied, shaking his head. "That's not fair. You, being sober, would be competing with me, a drunkard. Besides, I am certain that after Socrates' speech, you wouldn't believe anyone else. But if you wish, I will deliver a speech, only not in praise of Eros. I will praise Socrates, and I warn you, I will speak only the truth. You don't mind, do you, Socrates?" Socrates, with his characteristic irony, permitted him to say whatever he wished, and then Alcibiades began his astonishing speech, which once again changed the mood in the room, turning it from comedy back to a deep, but now no longer abstract, but living, passionate drama. To praise Socrates, my friends, I will resort to comparisons. He might think I want to ridicule him, but I do this for the sake of truth, not for laughs. Therefore, I maintain that he is incredibly similar to those statuettes of the Sileni sold in our sculptors' workshops. Have you seen them? They are these ugly, pot-bellied, snub-nosed satyrs, sitting with a pipe or a flute. But these statuettes have a secret. They open in half, and if you look inside, you can find tiny golden figures of the gods. This is what Socrates is like. On the outside, he is ugly. Look at him. Who would say he is handsome? But if you open him up, if you look into his soul when he is speaking seriously, you will find so much divine wisdom and beauty inside that everything else will seem worthless to you. His speeches, too, are like the music of the satyr Marsyas, that one enchanted people with the sounds of his flute. Socrates does the same thing, but with naked words, without any instrument. When someone else speaks, even the best orator, we might find it interesting, but nothing more. But when Socrates speaks, or when someone simply recounts his words, all of us, men, women, children, are struck to the depths of our souls. When I listen to him, my heart begins to beat faster than that of the Corybantes during their frenzied rituals. Tears stream from my eyes, and I see the same thing happening to many others. But when I listen to Pericles and other great orators, I thought they spoke well, But nothing of the sort ever happened to me. I was not seized by anxiety. My soul did not rebel against its own enslaved condition. But this Marsyas, this Socrates, has often brought me to such a state that it seemed to me that to live as I live is impossible. He is the only person in the world who makes me feel shame. In the presence of anyone else, I can maintain my confidence, but next to him, I am ashamed of myself. He forces me to admit that I, while caring for the affairs of the Athenians, do not care for myself at all, for my own soul, in which there are so many flaws. That is why I often run away from him, covering my ears as if from the song of the sirens, so that I do not remain frozen beside him into my old age. He makes me feel something that it would seem is not in my nature at all, the pain of my own worthlessness, and I don't know what to do with him. Sometimes I would be glad if he were no longer in this world, but I know that if that were to happen, my grief would be even greater. I am simply in complete despair. Alcibiades spoke, and his drunken voice trembled with sincere, undisguised feeling. It was a confession. It was the cry of a soul torn between love and hate, between admiration and pain. I have seen him from the inside, he continued, and his gaze became even more candid. I will tell you something that I should only tell in a small circle of initiates, but since we are speaking of love, I will tell it. I was once very proud of my beauty. I thought that Socrates was in love with me, and this was my chance. I decided I should gratify him, and in exchange for my beauty, he would share his wisdom with me. I invited him to dinners. We trained together. Once I managed for us to be left alone, and I said to him directly, Socrates, I think you are the best and most worthy of my admirers, and I am ready to render you any service. I want to become a better person, and I believe you can help me in this. He heard me out, and with his inherent irony, replied, My dear Alcibiades, if what you say about me is true, and there is a power in me that makes people better, then you must see in me some incredible, unearthly beauty, one that far surpasses your own, and you want to arrange an exchange to receive true beauty in return for perceived beauty. That is like trading bronze for gold. But look more closely, my friend, lest you be mistaken. The sight of the mind only becomes sharp when the sight of the eyes begins to fail, and you are still far from that. I was stunned, but I did not give up. I arranged it so that we were left to spend the night in the same room. At night, when the lamps were out, I crept up to him and lay down under his cloak. I lay there the whole night, embracing this wondrous, incredible man. And what do you think? He had absolutely no reaction. He spoke to me like a father or an older brother. My beauty, of which I was so proud, meant nothing to him. In the morning, I rose from his bed as a son from his father's bed, feeling at once both humiliation and an incredible admiration for his self-control, for his strength of spirit. I understood that I was dealing with a man made of adamant. I saw him in war as well. When we were on campaign near Potidaea, he endured cold and hunger better than any of us. In the harshest frosts, when no one else dared to go outside, he would calmly walk barefoot on the ice. And once he saved my life. I was wounded, and he did not retreat, but carried both me and my armor from the battlefield. I insisted that the prize for courage be awarded to him, but he, on the contrary, did everything to have it given to me. He is utterly indifferent to glory, just as he is to money or to beauty. Alcibiades took a breath. His speech was coming to an end. This is Socrates for you, strange, unlike anyone else. You can compare someone to Achilles or Pericles, but you will not find, among the ancients or among modern men, anyone who is like this strange satyr. He and his speeches are unique. He deceives everyone with his mask of ignorance and infatuation, but in reality, he is the living embodiment of what you have been talking about here. He is the true Eros, the one who walks barefoot and poor, the one who hunts for beautiful souls, the one who makes us feel pain for our own imperfection and strive for the truth. He is philosophy in the flesh. Alcibiades' speech, so passionate, tangled, and painfully frank, resounded in the room like a clap of thunder after a quiet, clear night. It swept away the entire solemn, philosophical atmosphere that had reigned until then. The laughter that rippled through the room was caused not only by his drunken candor, but also by the relief that everyone felt. The high, abstract conversation about ideas had suddenly returned to earth, embodied in a living, complex, and contradictory human drama. Everyone looked at Socrates as if for the first time and saw not just a philosopher, but that same strange, ugly, and yet divinely beautiful Silenus of whom Alcibiades had spoken. Socrates, with an imperturbable smile, joked in response, saying that Alcibiades' entire speech was in fact a cunning plan to make him and Agathon quarrel, as Alcibiades desires that Socrates should love only him. This playful banter momentarily restored a sense of lightness to the room, but the equilibrium had already been broken. The quiet, ordered banquet of the spirit was drawing to its close, and as if to confirm this, the door, left ajar, opened once more, and a new noisy crowd of revelers, returning from another party, tumbled into the room. They brought with them even more noise, laughter, and wine. The order finally disintegrated. Some of the guests, understanding that the philosophical part of the conversation was irrevocably over, began to take their leave. The physician Eryximachus, a man of habit and order, was one of the first to rise, having perhaps decided that it would be more beneficial for his health to greet the dawn in his own bed. Phaedrus, the young idealist, remained seated for a while with a dreamy smile, but soon overcome by the wine and the long discussions, he quietly fell asleep in a corner, perhaps dreaming of how his soul was growing wings. The other guests broke into small groups, holding quiet, fragmented conversations. Someone tried to argue with the newcomers. Someone simply drank, silently watching as the night faded. The room, which only an hour before had been a temple of thought, was transforming into a common place of nightly revelry. The oil lamps began to dim one by one, flickering one last time and plunging the corners of the room into darkness. The air grew heavy, filled with the smell of spilled wine, smoke from the extinguished lamps, and human fatigue. Gradually, one by one, the guests either departed or fell asleep right where they sat. The voices grew quiet, turning into an indistinct murmur, and then vanished altogether. The night was claiming its due, and so, amidst this quiet chaos of sleeping bodies and empty cups, only 3 tireless conversationalists remained. Seated around the table were Socrates, the master of the house and tragic poet Agathon, and the comic poet Aristophanes. They continued to drink from a large cup which they passed in a circle, and to hold some wondrous conversation. The dawn was already peeking through the windows, painting the sky in pale gray and pink hues, and still they talked. About what? About how a true artist, a genuine poet, must possess equally the art of creating both tragedy and comedy, that he who is by his nature a tragedian must also be a comedian, for only he who has comprehended the full scope of life, both its highest, most sorrowful peaks and its most ridiculous, most absurd abysses, can be considered a true expert on the human soul. Their conversation was like the final, deepest chord in the symphony of this night, one that united within itself laughter and tears, beauty and ugliness, the divine and the earthly, but even their strength was not limitless. The first to fall asleep, without hearing out Socrates' next proof, was Aristophanes. His head sank to his chest, and he plunged into dreams, perhaps of whole spherical people who had finally found one another. Soon after, Agathon followed him. Having lost both his interlocutors, Socrates sat for a while longer in the silence, looking at his sleeping friends and at the first rays of the sun touching the floor. He was the only one whom neither wine, nor fatigue, nor the sleepless night had overcome. When the sun had fully risen, he calmly stood up, carefully stepping over the sleeping bodies. He left the house where disarray and sleep reigned, and headed not home to rest, but, as was his custom, to the Lyceum. There, he washed himself and spent the entire next day in his usual affairs and conversations, as if this long night, so full of philosophy and wine, had never been. He had returned from his night flight to the highest of ideas, and once again stood firmly on the earth in the light of a new day.